G'day and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about pest farming on Hypixel Skyblock. The garden recently released an update where a whole bunch of stuff was added into the game. As you can see, there's new crops, sunflower, moonflower, wild rose. There's also a whole AFK component to the garden. But the main purpose of this video is to talk about specifically pests and how you can make as much coins or progress as possible through this system. The very first question I imagine you have would be, is pest farming worth it? Does it produce enough coins per hour or enough resources per hour to justify me doing pest farming as opposed to farming? And let me say this to put it in perspective. I can achieve a diamond in some of the crops solely from pests without even farming that crop at all. In fact, today I received multiple gold medals very comfortably without even farming any other crop than moonflower. And I got these medals in wild rose, I got them in cocoa beans. It was pretty easy. When it comes to pest farming, there's a few stats you need to keep in mind. The very first one is the pest spawn cooldown. The pest spawn cooldown refers to the time taken between pests spawning and the ability for you to then spawn them again. This is typically 5 minutes. During Mayor Finnegan's perk, it reduces it down to about 2.5. Beyond this, if you as the player wear a particular equipment set with a particular reforge, you can reduce this cooldown to just over 1 minute. I'll go through the total setup in a moment, which will include that equipment and that reforge. But first, I want to talk you through the method. Not only do you want to reduce the spawn cooldown so you can spawn pests as frequently as possible, but you also want to increase your bonus pest chance as high as possible so that each time you spawn a cycle of pests, you get as many pests in that cycle. Beyond that, you also want to increase your farming fortune and your farming fortune specific for pests so that you can maximize the amount of drops you're getting per pest vacuumed. The way I see it, there's 3 points in this method. The first is while you're waiting for the pest cooldown, you just want to have maximum farming fortune while you farm those crops. As soon as pest cooldown hits 0, you're on to phase 2, and you want to have maximum bonus pest chance so that you can spawn as many pests as possible. Once the pests are spawned, that opens phase 3, and then you want to have the most farming fortune for pests so that you're able to maximize the drops that you get from them. As soon as phase 3 is over, you go back to farming with the maximum farming fortune like in phase 1 and continue the process on repeat. The final comment I'll make at this stage is that the majority of resources you acquire will actually be generated from pests themselves. This is not only the base crops you get from pests, it also includes the RNG items you get. Maybe it's a slug pet, maybe it's a fire in a bottle, maybe it's an overclocker. But you will get a lot of RNGs, vinyls, all of those can be sold for coins. And so therefore, because the most amount of coins you'll make it actually from pests during this method, I highly recommend if there's anything you need to do regarding downtime, whether that's going to the bathroom, clearing your visitors, checking your pest traps or the greenhouse, do so while the pest cooldown is with a minute to go, i.e. immediately after you've vacuumed up a spawn of pests so that you're not wasting the time taken to spawn another cycle. With all this in mind, let's talk setup. The very first thing I'd like to speak about is the pet that you use. This will actually be different for each phase. The very first phase, you want to look at the mushroom cow. If you don't have a mushroom cow, you can use an elephant pet or something similar, but this gives you the most coins per hour, gives you the greatest farming fortune, as well as the additional mushrooms, which just gives you more coins. Once you hit phase 2, when the pests are possible to spawn, that's when you should flip to either a slug pet or the ideal, which is the mosquito pet. Slug pet gives you a bunch of bonus pest chance, which is really nice. The mosquito pet does the same, however, it also has a perk that allows pest vinyls to be more effective. Now, when you look at coins per hour or maximizing a specific crop milestone from a pest, having the mosquito pet's additional perk, if you can afford a mosquito pet, is really valuable, allowing you to target specific pests and will get your rates slightly higher. If you can't afford a mosquito pet, that's pretty understandable, just use a slug pet. The final pet for phase 3, which is the vacuuming of the pests, is non-negotiable, and that is the hedgehog pet. This has a perk that will allow you to do 100% more damage to pests, which is super valuable in terms of one-shotting, especially the earthworm pest, which tends to teleport. Beyond this, it gives you a significant amount of farming fortune for pests, and therefore will help you achieve even more drops per pest, allowing you to make more profit. I highly recommend you at this point to invest in some auto pet rules, and I'll show you the auto pet rules on the screen now so you can just copy it without having to think. Firstly, you have the mosquito with the exception of mosquito and hedgehog. You then have the hedgehog with the exception of hedgehog and mushroom. And finally, you have the mushroom with the exception of mushroom and mosquito. This will allow you to flip from mushroom for farming fortune into mosquito for spawning, into hedgehog for vacuuming, and all the way back into mushroom and repeating the cycle. If you get this wrong, don't worry about it, but it is on the screen, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. In terms of armor, you want to have your normal arming set such as Femento, or if you're rich enough to afford Helianthus, you want the Pest Hunter's necklace, belt, and gloves, and in addition to that, you want the Pest vest. The necklace, belt, and gloves you can get from the Pest Hunter Wares, which is a shop on the garden, but the Pest Vest is going to be a little bit more challenging in that you get this from Talbot's shop in the Trapper's Den while the Finnegan perk there is active. The Reforge, as you can see, is Squeaky. You can get this from the Squeaky toy that drops as an RNG from the Field Mouse, which you can only get as a pest spawning from pest traps. That's all you can really do to reduce the pest cooldown, which gives you the most frequency of pests. Now we're going to talk about bonus pest chance to give you the most amount of pests per cycle. The Vermin Vaporizer chip at legendary rarity and maximum Sawdust gives you 100 base pest chance. The Mosquito Pet, if you max all of the pest bestiaries, give it a brown bandana and have it at level 100, will give you 92 base pest chance. I should say, a little PSA, this is excluding the bestiary that you'll get from pests spawning out of mutations. I have not unlocked those yet, and so they're not included. Moving on to the other things you can do to increase it. The Pest Hunter Relic is the max talisman you can get from the Pest Hunter Wares shop. That gives you an 80 bonus pest chance when you max it out. The Sprayinator is a really important addition to this setup as well, even though it is temporary and it does cost some materials in order to spray a garden plot. Not only do you get 50 additional bonus pest chance, but you actually get twice the chance of spawning pests per crop broken. Pests do not automatically spawn every time you break a crop just because the cooldown is 0. They have a very small chance of spawning. So if you want your pest to spawn as soon as the cooldown is ready, then having a sprayed plot will double the likelihood of that happening. A really cool thing they changed in this update as well is giving the farming armor a base value. So Helianthus is the max, that gives a base value of 20, and Pesterminator 6 is an enchant you can put on that to max it out at 26. The Femento, interestingly, has only 17.5, so it gives you further incentive to try and upgrade all the way to Helianthus if you can. In addition, the Stinky Cheese effect is a temporary potion you can get from Talbot's shop in the Trapper's Den. It's the same shop with Finnegan. That gives you another 20 bonus pest chance. It's the same place that you'll get the green bandana for the Mosquito Pet and the Pest Vest. Wriggling Lava is an RNG you can get from the Moth Pet. That gives you 2 bonus pest chance per consumption, up to a maximum of 10 from 5 consumptions. And finally, the last 3 pieces of equipment, you can get all 3 of them from the Pest Hunter Wares shop in the garden. The Squeaky Reforge is from the Field Mouse, which you can catch in traps. It is a bit of an RNG, but over time, you'll get more than enough. The very last thing to look at, if you've decreased the spawn cooldown as much as possible and you've maximized your bonus pest chance, the very last thing you need to look at is increasing your farming fortune for pests. The only real change to the setup that I make is I flip to the Hedgehog Pet. The Hedgehog Pet allows me to one-shot pests because it does 100% more damage. It also has a bunch of farming fortune attached to pest bestiary tiers, and specifically 100 farming fortune for pests themselves. And there's really not much else that you need to do in terms of equipment changes. The last thing I will talk about, though, is the difference between the Manted Claw and the Overgrown Grass. The Manted Reforge provides 2 bonus pest chance, 10 farming fortune, and the Manted bonus, which gives 0.25 bonus pest chance per pest killed for 10 minutes, capping at 5%. The Mossy Reforge, on the other hand, gives 7 speed, which is useless, and 25 farming fortune. I do believe that if you're on a budget, Manted is probably the better option. I'm going to keep using my Mossy Reforge because they are obnoxiously difficult to get on Iron Man, and I would just prefer to have more farming fortune in general. However, if you're on a budget, Manted Claw is coming in at about 50k coins versus the Overgrown Grass, which is nearly 20 million, and I honestly don't think that there is much difference in terms of the overall rates, so Overgrown Grass is probably not worth the expense. There are a few mechanics to be aware of in terms of targeting certain pests, whether this is for coins per hour, getting certain drops on Iron Man, or increasing your crop milestones. Firstly, looking at the vacuum, you can choose a vinyl if you have the max vacuum with the chirping stereo, and that will choose which pest you're more likely to spawn. It's not a guarantee, but it certainly does help. This, combined with the mosquito pet and the correct material used in the sprayinator, will basically guarantee that at least 3 of the 5 pests that you spawn should be the particular pest that you're after. That is pretty good rates. A note for the Iron Man community watching this is that you should really be focusing on trying to get Fermento, Helianthus, even Squash or Crappie, rather than actually getting the materials. You can get the materials quite effectively from the pests, but getting those RNG drops, such as Helianthus, Fermento, Squash, and Crappie, is going to take significantly longer. So choose the crop you farm based on what rare drop you need, and then whatever crop you need, whatever material you need, use pests in order to generate that instead. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned something new, and if I helped you out a little bit, do consider dropping me a like or even consider subscribing. I really enjoy making these videos, so any little bit of support goes a long way to help the channel along. If there's anything you want to add or any comments you want to make, do feel free also to drop those down below. In any case, I'll see you in the next video.